Hello, so good to be with you today. I'm going to try to take several different things and put them together in this message. So we're here just, less than 2 weeks before Christmas. And we've been in Ecclesiastes, and last week we did a message about how do we communicate with God. And as I was thinking about preparing for this week, and looking at potentially marching on in Ecclesiastes, I took a step back and I thought about, well, let's think about the other side of that. How does God communicate with us? And then I really thought a lot of this had to do with it being this time of year of a Christmas message. And so this week and next week, I'm going to take our thoughts and try to tie them in to some things from Ecclesiastes, but also relate them to this very special time of year of Christmas. So let's think about that as a beginning. When you think of Christmas, I'm sure you have traditions you like, maybe food you like, things you like to do. It's a time with family. But isn't it an amazing thing that here we are, over 2,000 years since the time of Christ, and the world stops and it celebrates Christmas. And we have phrases like Merry Christmas here. But as we've been going through Ecclesiastes, we see the absolute struggles of this wise man, Solomon. He hasn't been incredibly merry. He keeps saying everything is vanity and all. But yet, many people in our world today even struggle with depression and sadness. They're not very merry this time of year. I hope wherever you're at, we can think about reasons we should all be very merry indeed. We remember the true meaning of Christmas. And then it also is kind of part of our ongoing study about this idea of communicating with God. So let's see what we can do to pull all this together. All right. So all I'll say as a summary from last week's message of Ecclesiastes is I asked you to think about how you communicate with God and what a privilege it is. I hope that you do. I hope you've put it into practice. And we learned some things about that, about guarding our steps, because God is holy and He's righteous. And so we should come to Him reverently. His name should be reverent when we use it. But isn't it amazing that He allows us to come near to Him? And we'll see this week also about how He communicates with us. And we should be listening. Did you listen this last week? Are you listening? It gives us wisdom. It gives us direction. He wants to speak to us, and that's part of also today's message. We need to think carefully about our words. We don't need to have excessive words. We looked at that. We need to be to the point. God is to the point with us, and be very careful that we keep what we say. And as we think today about how God communicates with us, He always keeps His word. And isn't that a wonderful thing to know that when He shares something with us, it is absolutely true. We can count on it 100%. So let's take these thoughts and let's think about how God communicates with us. First, isn't it awesome? He does communicate with us. And one way He communicates with us is through creation itself. I'm going to divide this for today's lesson at least into two parts. And this is the first part about it. And within this, there's multiple things to consider. First, just the fact that we are created. We were given this privilege of life. We were given a body, a mind, a soul. We should respond as Psalm does in 139:14. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. I think at some point, people sometimes struggle with it, but I think we have it in our heart that we were created, that we are created, that we were given, as was given in Genesis, the first breath of life, that we were given this very thing. And there ought to be a joy in just knowing that. and responding to it. And going back to Ecclesiastes, we know that our creation is not just temporal, that He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, He has put eternity into man's heart. When Ecclesiastes talks about wisdom, that goes back in time. And this idea that we are created, this idea that we are eternal, I think God has put that in our heart. It speaks to us that there's a God and there's a Creator. And I want to share, and there's so many verses, I'm trying to balance our time here. There's so many more that could be shared. But I want to share this really powerful passage from Romans 1:19. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For His invisible attributes, namely His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world and the things that have been made, and so they are without excuse, and we're without excuse. We have our own body, but then we also have the beauty of the earth. We see the sun that rises every day. We see the moon at night and the stars that shine. We see the created animal kingdom and all of its wonders, plant life, everything. Sometimes we get distracted, but just as it was in the time of Solomon, so it is today. Our very body, the things that are around us, what is in our heart, they all show these are ways that God communicates with us. Now, I want to wrap these parts up and share this important, sermon, plea that Paul gave. And it kind of puts some of these things together. And it's from Acts 17, starting in verse 22. So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, Men of Athens. And this is where the wise people gathered. I perceive in every way you are very religious. So we've got two things here. People are religious because they have this thing in their heart. They know they're created, so it makes them want to respond. And so he goes on. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I think all cultures, they may worship different things in different ways, but some things in their heart that makes them want to worship. And he said, I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. What therefore you worship is unknown, this I proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in creation, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man. Nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything, what we were talking about earlier. And they knew this, but they weren't sure how to respond. They wanted to respond in some way. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way towards him and find him. But he's not far from us. And so we see this idea of creation, this desire for worship, that we were made by God, the things around us were made by God. And so that is how partly God draws us to us, and he wants to be in a relationship with us. He's not far away. If we draw near to him, he'll draw near to us. Now, we're going to build on this about another way God communicates with us, and that's through his word. And there's kind of a gradual unveiling here. We go back to the beginning of the Bible with the fall of man. When sin entered the world, there was also a prophecy of God, as God dealt with man and as he dealt with the serpent, the enemy, Satan himself, that there's going to be enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring, and he shall bruise your head and you shall bruise his heel. And at that point, that's, more details come along later. But this is speaking to the one who would be born from woman, the one born of a virgin, the one who would be bruised and be on a cross, but would ultimately destroy the enemy. But it speaks to how God wants to reconcile us despite our sin, and that day would come. We jump forward in time, and I could go many more details, but let's just jump ahead to Genesis 12:1. The Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you'll be a blessing, and I'll bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I'll curse. But in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So gradually more revelation comes through the written word. All people have eternity in their heart. And we see through this line of Abraham that he's going to build a nation of Israel, but all people will be blessed wherever they live, despite geography and time period. Jumping to Numbers 24:17. Again, this gradual revelation. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. But a star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter, a king, shall rise out of Israel. And God continues to unveil his message. 2 Samuel 7:12. The time of the kings, when your days are fulfilled and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up your offspring after you, who shall come from your body. I will establish his kingdom. Now we see not just Abraham, but the line of David as well. And all these promises and the specifics are becoming more and more detailed. I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Isaiah 7:14. And therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. And the virgin. Now remember, back in Genesis, there was a promise that through a woman, there would be that one who would come and ultimately destroy the head of the enemy. She shall conceive and bear a son, and his name shall be Emmanuel, which means God with us. Now, in this final passage I'm going to share today, I want you to think about when it was written. This is from Isaiah 9. And again, there are 100 such prophecies, 100 such promises in the written word. But God reveals himself to us by our very nature. He's put it in our heart, and then he also has given us the specifics of his word throughout time, and promises, and hope. So this was written about 2,700 years ago, and it's something that we still celebrate this Christmas. To us a child is born, and to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. Just to pause for a second, we think about all the division in government. But the day is coming when we will truly, have you ever felt like, wish we could have better government leaders? We're going to have a new government someday. It's a promise. It'll be a wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, and of the increase of his government, and of peace. You can think about that, the wars that we have, the divisions, the strife, everything. But the promise of the Son who came, the Prince of Peace, a peace there will be no end, on the throne of David just as promised, over his kingdom to establish and to uphold it with justice, with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. Now, that brings us to the conclusion of today's message. But God communicates to us. He will continue to communicate to us. We've seen the wonderful coming of his Son, Christ, who was born as promised. We also look forward to the day. That day is coming, and we've been looking for it. And God loves all of mankind so much that he is patient. And that's why he's allowing his message to continue to go forward and this communication to occur. But the day is coming of a promised kingdom. And for that reason, we can be having a Merry Christmas, because we think about the true meaning of Christmas. A God who loves us, who has communicated with us in his love. And that gives us an opportunity to respond to it. And I hope and pray you will. I hope this will give you encouragement. Whatever is going on in your life, there may be lots of troubles. But these are the things that are eternal. And I hope it helps us think about the true meaning of Christmas.